Researchers have determined that when an individual appraises a situation is threatening, their blood pressure rises because their entire vascular system reacts. And this is known as total peripheral resistance. That's what happened to me. I had a heart attack in 2010. The reason I had a heart attack, I'm really healthy. I'm a little heavier than I should be, and I'm not going to say I'm not. But I'm fairly healthy. I exercise all the time. So why in the world would I ever have a heart attack? Well, the reason I had a heart attack was because I got fired. I got fired, and it was so stressful, not being able to do what I thought I was going to be able to do for the rest of my life. It was on the Fort Belknap Reservation up in Montana. I thought I was going to be able to stay there for the rest of my life and be around the people who seemed to like me a whole lot, except for the person that fired me, of course. Anyway, so because it was such a threatening situation, my blood pressure went sky high and I had a heart attack. I've recovered from it since, of course. I'm pretty damn healthy right now. When a situation is appraised as challenging, the heart rate and the cardiac output increases, but not the vessel resistance, and this is known as myocardial reactivity. The 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, is the longest nerve in the body, and it responds to physical and emotional demands by controlling the body's reaction. The vagus nerve runs from the brainstem all the way down to the bottom of your gut, and that's where your vagus nerve is. You don't want to get that sucker cut. Vagal tone is heart rate variability and gauges the difference between increases and decreases in heart rate and breathing patterns. In 1997, Fabies and Eisenberg measured vagal tone in students. Students with high vagal tones were more likely to experience negative emotions. So this vagus nerve, this tiny little nerve that runs from your brainstem all the way down to the bottom of your gut, this thing can actually control your emotions. So you need to be careful. Researchers have speculated that when an individual is given a choice, it enhances their feelings of control. Even trivial or illusory choices can give a person the feeling of control. And it's one of the reasons I teach my classes the way I do. I give you the choice to do your work whenever when it's available to you, when you can get it done. I feel that this is actually helping you do your work because you don't feel pressured to get it done in a select amount of time. I have these arguments all the time with my colleagues. Marius was just talking about should he give somebody a day's grace on getting an assignment in. You know, Jeremiah came to my office earlier today and he was talking about exactly the same thing. And I'm wondering, why in the world are you putting your students under so much pressure? That just doesn't make any sense to me. Go ahead. I mean, if you're going to have your baby sometime in May, what if you have your baby at the end of April? I still need to give you the option to get all your work done. Maybe you're not feeling very good one week and you don't get any of your work done. Why in the world would I pressure you to turn it in at a select time? Or I'm not going to give you credit for it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I like to give my students as much control as possible. The problem is, of course, sometimes if you give the more control you give them, the less control they actually take. And so they don't get the job done. They need somebody, they want me to be a high school teacher and tell them exactly when to get things done. And because if I don't tell them when to do it, they never get it done. And that happens from time to time. But I would like to treat everybody like an adult. So I'll let you have as much control as you possibly can handle. While no choice can injure motivation and health, too much choice can have an equally detrimental effect. However, this is only true in individualistic cultures. In collectivist environments like Asia or Latin America, choice is not desired. So they want to be told when to do things. They want to be told when to come into work. They want to be told when to go home. They want to be told how to do the job. We as Americans, of course, don't like that. I certainly don't like it. I would rather teach my class the way I want to teach my class. I don't want somebody coming in and telling me, no, you don't have the right stuff in your syllabi, now you need to change all this and force your students. We need to teach them time management. Like I said, I'll let Marius teach you that. I'll let Christine teach you that. Christine will teach you. Yeah. Or you won't make it. Repressive coping is the emotion-focused style in which we inhibit emotional responses, especially in social situations, so that we can view ourselves as imperturbable. We want to feel good about ourselves. So one of the things that we do is we try to control our emotions as if we have control over ourselves. Control is very important. Emotional suppression triggers the fight or flight response. Cortisol levels rise when emotions are suppressed. Repressive coping has been linked to cardiovascular disease, cancer, asthma, and diabetes. And so this is one of the reasons why we tell you to express yourselves, not repress any information or repress feelings. The more you repress your feelings, the more likely you're going to get sick. And this is the way you get sick. As you can see, it's the major killers in the United States. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, asthma. These are the major killers in the United States. So what you need to do, of course, is not repress your emotions. Emotional disclosure is associated with a variety of positive health benefits. Researchers have found that there's a strong correlation between negative coping and negative effects. Repression, of course, avoidance coping, pessimism, being a pessimistic individual, depression, and generalized anxiety. This leads to a coping style known as neuroticism. And of course, neuroticism is a word that came out of Freud. It's been around for about 150 years, the idea that you're using an incorrect coping technique, depression, anxiety, whatnot, hysteria. These are incorrect coping techniques. So you need to learn a positive coping technique. And of course, she's curled up in a corner. Social support is companionship from others that conveys emotional concern, material assistance, or honest feedback. Of course, this is potentially what you get from your parents. Your parents give you emotional support. They care about you. They care about how you're feeling. If you need it, they'll give you money, potentially. And of course, they'll tell you like it is. Hopefully, they'll tell you like it is. Sometimes this doesn't happen. I have a niece that everything that she did in her life was perfect, as amazing as that is. And it wasn't perfect because of what she did. It was perfect because her mother wanted her to be perfect. So she interpreted anything that she did as perfect. She never gave her honest feedback, and because of that, the individual suffers from schizophrenia. She was never told she was wrong, so everything that she thinks is correct. We may have a president that thinks exactly the same way. Everything he thinks is right. No matter how dumb it is, and no matter how other people tell him it's incorrect, well, they don't last for very long if they tell him it's incorrect, so he fires them. People who perceive strong social support experience have faster recoveries, fewer medical complications, lower mortality rates at any age. No matter how young or how old they are, they still are more likely to survive. Less distress in the face of terminal illness. Things to worry about, I'm dying, therefore, how much distress are you going to be in? It was kind of fun, no, that's not the right word. It was kind of interesting watching my mother die, kind of interesting watching my sister die, kind of interesting watching my father die. They were all ready to go, and they knew it, and they accepted it. They weren't distressed at all. Any of the three of them weren't distressed at all. I watched a lot of people struggle when they died. I watched thousands of people die, sadly enough. But the The stronger your social support, the less distress that you have. The buffering hypothesis may mitigate stress indirectly through the use of more effective coping strategies. People who perceive social support are less likely to ruminate. Married people live longer, happier lives than unmarried people, just the way it works. Direct effect hypothesis may enhance the body's physical responses to challenging situations, giving the body better immune functioning, encourages healthier lifestyles and better relationships with doctors and nurses. What in the world am I talking about? Prostatic specific antigen. Males are a lot different than females. They have different plumbing. One of the pieces of plumbing that they have that females don't have is a prostate gland. Prostate gland encircles the urethra, sadly enough. The more stress the individual is under, that the male is under, the higher the PSA level. Men with self-reported high levels of stress also tend to have higher levels of PSA. PSA is a biomarker for prostate cancer. So as a male, every time I go in to see the doctor for my yearly checkup, I always have a PSA drawn, because as a lab tech, I know what PSA means. And I want to keep my prostate healthy. Sadly, if you have prostatitis merely means inflammation of the prostate gland. And if this thing it inflames, then it shuts off the urethra and you can't urinate. I was at Walmart the other day and this guy I was urinating, and the guy beside me was urinating as well, but he was grunting and stumbling, and he wasn't peeing at all, but he was pushing as hard as he possibly could, trying to get that urine out, but he couldn't get it out. It just wouldn't come out. And I felt embarrassed because I had no problem whatsoever urinating. I guess I shouldn't have felt so bad. Actually, I felt kind of proud of myself for being able to urinate. This is really weird, I know. You guys don't ever think about this kind of stuff, but the reality is, as men get older, this is something that they need to really think about, because this can really mess you up. You're having prostatitis. So stress can cause prostatitis to occur. So males need to make sure they have good prostate health. If you look at magazines, they're advertising for different herbs to help men's prostate glands. It's a little bizarre. It's beyond a little bizarre, I guess. What is social support worth? Meta-analysis of 148 studies found that social support was worth about 50% lower risk of future mortality. Research shows, and this is what CAS is all about. I didn't pronounce it correctly, I understand that, but this is what your clanship is all about. This is what your family is all about. This is why families are so important. It can increase your life expectancy by quite a bit. Research shows that the more support you receive from your social group, the longer your telomeres. The longer the telomere, the more resilient the structure. So this is the telomere at the end. As long as your telomeres are healthy, then you can live for a longer period of time. The telomeres actually allow the cell to repair itself. As soon as the telomeres stop repairing itself, then all of a sudden things start breaking down. And now we've got heart disease, we've got all kinds of interesting problems that we didn't have before. People with better social skills receive more support. Angry and hostile people receive less support than agreeable people do. Angry people report more negative life events. Angry people make others feel more stress, and of course, try to keep from getting angry. It's one of the reasons why I'm a little antsy about the fifth floor talking about historical trauma all the time. I think historical trauma is real, but I don't know how bad you guys feel about 1868. 1868 is when you came home, I'm sorry, 1864. 1864 between 1868. Should we still be worrying about that? Or should I be even thinking about the Civil War? I had almost all my relatives fought in the Civil War. Most of them fought for the Union, some of them fought for the South, but most of them fought for the Union. That was fairly traumatic. Should I still be thinking about the Vietnam War? I was taken away from my wife and my baby, and I was shipped overseas to shoot yellow people. That wasn't very kind. To shoot Vietnamese people. Little bitty short guys, little bitty tiny guys. Should I worry about that? Should that be something that I think about all the time? Should that be something that bothers me or continues to bother me? It continues to bother my brother. So we'll see how long he lives and how long I live. Social support may actually backfire when it is not wanted or is inadequate. The type of support offered is not what is needed at the moment. Moral support may be offered while instrumental support is needed. We're not going to give you any money, but here we're on your side. Too much social support increases a person's stress. There is sometimes the case after the loss of a loved one. This can be the case when the individual feels a responsibility to entertain rather than to deal with the stressors. And of course, we've seen that. Everybody goes over to somebody's house. Now all of a sudden they need to, they need to make supper so that everybody has something to eat. Wait a minute, I've only got 3 bottles of water in my refrigerator. Somebody go out and I'm gonna have to go to the store and buy, a case of pop or whatever. Oh my goodness gracious. So potentially, of course, negative things can happen. If that's the type of family that you live with. My family wasn't that way. If somebody went over to help somebody, they always brought food with them, as weird as that is. Of course, nobody, who wants a bucket of KFC? Everybody does. Everybody loves KFC. What am I talking about? Anyway, situation that just happened. My son's birthday was January 11th. His cat was dying. This cat that they've had for 17 years. I know, this is kind of tragic. Don't start crying. The cat that I rescued, still alive, getting bigger. Okay. His ears came off. His ears were frozen. The tips of his ears have come off. So now he's earless.
You found the cat?
It was out in the coffee shop. And it was skinny. Oh, it was so skinny. Wasn't that the skinniest cat you've ever seen? How could that cat be? Oh my God, I hope you. The only other cat that I've ever seen that was skinnier than that was dead. So yeah, this is a really, really skinny cat.
You took it in?
I'm sorry?
You took it in?
Yeah, I took it in. I couldn't not feed a starving cat. I'm too soft-hearted.
So you had a cat?
I had
Pet?
2 cats.
2 cats?
I had 2 cats and a dog. They're all res dog. They're all res animals. We won't go into you guys not taking care of your pets. So I get to do it. Me and Margaret get to take care of your pets. So my son, the 11th of January was his birthday. I tried to call him on his birthday and he wouldn't call me back. And I think the reason he wouldn't call me back is because his cat was dying. The cat that he's had for 17 years. And he hasn't called me since. But evidently he texted my wife. It looks like he's going to get another job. He's teaching high school math down in Florida. He hates Florida, he hates teaching high school. But it looks like he's got a job with the FBI. It looks like it might be the FBI. Oh, that's on tape. Looks like he might have a job with the FBI. So we'll see what happens. But he hasn't called me back yet. But then again, his cat was dying. And he
Is
thinks,
that your fault?
no, it's a 17-year-old tomcat, so they don't live very long. They don't tend to live very long anyway. So, I'm not worried about my son. He's going to call me whenever he feels like it and apologize for not calling me back. That's what will happen. But we're family, so if he gets to move this summer, I'll drive a truck down there and help him move. That's what will happen. And everything will be fine, except his cat will be gone, I hope. It's 17 years old and its kidneys have shut down.
Cats have 9 lives, so.
Well, he's already used up 8 of them. I think he's on his last one. A variety of psychological methods have been designed to reduce the impact of potentially stressful experiences. Gratitude, people who maintain a grateful outlook on life cope better with stress. Humor, laughter, and a good sense of humor can help people cope with stress. Anytime that I get buried in stress, like when they added my standing courage class, the 290 class, real stressful because standing, he hadn't done anything for 5 weeks. And now I've got to teach everybody all of the entire research methods book in the next 10 weeks. So I'm doing that, and he told him not to buy, are you in that class? You're not in that class, are you? He told him not to buy a textbook, so I've got to present all this material to them. So how do I do that? I know, I had to come up with a solution in 12 hours. Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you get all that material to all the students? 19 chapters, because if they don't have this is research methods. So if they don't have this information, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen is that when they go to Christine's 413 class, they're going to get their asses kicked, right? Mm. Yeah. And Christine will eat them alive because she's a tigress. She will just devour each and every one of them. So I've got to get 19 chapters worth of material to these individuals in the next 10 weeks. So how do I do that? And they don't have textbooks. I can't tell them to read the damn chapter.
You could have just dropped the class.
Then I've got 31 people who don't have, aren't going to be in the right cycle. They're going to have to take an extra year of college and pay that extra money. So how do I do it? How would you do it? I had to figure this out in 12 hours.
I don't know.
PowerPoints.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, real comprehensive PowerPoints. So I went online and I got the PowerPoints from Macmillan, who printed the book. They are the worst PowerPoints you have ever seen. They cover nothing, almost nothing. So I'm rewriting, I have to write all these PowerPoints to give my students all that information. But don't worry, everything will be okay. But it's stressing me out. It's real hard. It's not easy. Why am I talking? Oh, so anytime I have anything that's real stressful, I try to laugh. I try to laugh about it. A lot of real horrible things have happened in my life. I mean, I've seen a lot of people die. I've been divorced twice.
Been stabbed.
I've been stabbed by my first wife. That wasn't a big deal. She was ready to leave anyway. It was her swan song was stabbing me in the chest. So what I try to do is I try to laugh anytime I possibly can. It was tough. It was tough over the last 2 weeks. It's been rough, but I'm doing okay. I've created 3 PowerPoints with 2 chapters in each PowerPoint. So that's 6 chapters I've covered. Yeah, it's pretty good. Hopefully this week I'll do 2 more chapters. I'll be okay. I'll be fine. But I need to watch comedy shows in between because if I take all this too seriously, I'll probably have another heart attack or something. Humor, laughter, and good sense of humor can help people cope with stress, and that's what I try to do. Whenever I get too serious, I sing myself a silly song. It's the song from It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. You know, it's a Mad, 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 Mad World was a movie they made in the 60s. And it's got all these comedians in it, and it's about really serious stuff. It's about greedy people trying to get money. But all these really silly things happen to them while they're going from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, or Santa Rosa, which is just south of Los Angeles. Anyway, so it's a really funny movie. So I sing myself that song, and it keeps me from getting too serious. So humor boosts your mood, it bolsters the immune system, it increases natural killer cell activity, it reduces epinephrine and cortisol secretions, it reduces the risk of coronary heart disease, it lowers blood pressure, it promotes vascular health, it provides a general sense of well-being. A hearty laugh is also quite aerobic. So humor is really important. Humor can keep you alive, as sad as that is. So you need to watch all the funny shows that you possibly can. The problem is, of course, that things aren't nearly as funny now as they used to be. Comedians aren't as funny as they used to be. They don't have humor on television anymore, not like they used to have. So I don't know what we're going to do. Pet ownership has been shown to help lower blood pressure. I just adopted a cat, and this cat lets me touch it. That's really kind of fun because I get to pet the cat. My other cat, every time I try to pet her, she bites me. I know, she's a res cat. I don't know what's wrong with her. Studies have shown that an interaction with a pet will decrease cortisol levels and increase levels of dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. Dopamine, of course, is the happy drug. Serotonin is the happy drug. Oxytocin is the nesting drug. So as you get closer and closer to giving birth to your child, you'll be doing really interesting things that you've never done before. You'll want to paint the rooms. You'll want to cook for everybody. You'll want to buy soft blankets. You'll want to change your pillow. Really weird things happen. This is happening to Marius. His wife made me a pot of some kind of stew. Okay. So for me, it's for me. He's supposed to give it to me. She was mad at him yesterday. So she made, instead of making it, she made him lunch, but when she made him lunch, she told him to give most of it to me. So I get his lunch. Okay, this is, she's nesting. This is a nesting gene. It makes you want to hold your baby. It makes you want to cuddle your baby. Makes you want to jiggle your baby up and down because they're so nice and soft. And this is what makes you want to do that. In animals, of course, this is what allows them to take care of their young. And it's the same way with humans. We need the oxytocin in order to tell us to take care of our babies. Some nursing home facilities have started using pet therapy to reduce the level of loneliness in their clients, and of course, pet therapy works. 67 of pet owners said their pets provide companionship and reduce loneliness. And of course, I need that too because, well, I'm home alone and I need somebody to talk to. My wife's not there. Half the time when I call her on the phone, she's mad at me for one thing or another. You know, life's too tough. Spirituality has been linked with medicine throughout human history. 80% of Americans believe that spirituality promoted and supports good health. So this is really important. It doesn't have to be Christianity. It can be any form of spirituality. It can be the Native American church. It can be Judaism. It can be Muslim, Islam. It can be Hinduism. It can be Buddhism. Really doesn't matter. People who are religiously active tend to live longer than people who are not active. 69% of people in the United States say that they are moderately to very religious. This is a lot of people. That's about 70% of the people in the United States are really religious. Go to church every Sunday, including my wife. Goes to church every Sunday. Haven't been to church since I got married. Oh, wait a minute. The second time. I got married in a church the second time. The third time I got married out in the park, barefoot in the park. Got married barefoot in the park. I don't know. So I'm connected with the earth. Our marriage is connected with the earth. People who are religiously active tend to eat healthier, to exercise more, to smoke less, to consume alcohol less, and are less likely to engage in high-risk sexual behaviors. We didn't scratch out that part, but the consuming alcohol is really quite important because there are some religions that don't let you drink. Methodists, for example, don't drink hardly at all. Islam, the Muslims aren't allowed to drink either. So there are some, of course, religions that won't allow you to drink. Religious attendance protects adherents from migraine headaches, as bizarre as that is, and of course, high blood pressure. Healthier lifestyle accounts for 25% of the longevity difference between people. Religion tends to be communal. The religiously active tend to have more social ties than the general population. As I've told you before, I grew up outside the church. We didn't go to church, but all my neighbors did. And I was always kind of jealous of my next door neighbors. Well, next door was like a quarter mile down the road, but that's okay, they were farmers. I was always jealous because they always had something to do. They always had someplace to go. And the reason they did is because they not only went to church on Sunday, but they went to church on Wednesday. And the church sponsored all this stuff, pet and hobby, a euchre club. I mean, they got to do all of this stuff all the time. And so they were around a lot of different people. And of course, I wasn't. And because I didn't go to church, and this was a Methodist town, there were a lot of things that they wouldn't let me join. I couldn't join the Boy Scouts, for example. I couldn't join, I couldn't go to dances because it was being held at the D. Malay Hall. D. Malay has something to do, I have no idea. Anyway, so I couldn't go until I started dating somebody who was another Methodist. And so she was a Methodist, so I could go because she was a Methodist. They would let me go in. You know, I would have, thunder and lightning and all kinds of stuff if I had gone in there without another Methodist. People who go to church on a regular basis have a sense of group identity. This can mean tangible assistance during times of stress, informational support. Really kind of interesting, my wife is real involved in the church in Lost Nation where we live. Every time somebody dies, geez, it's like people come out of the woodwork and they'll bring food and they will all this support. I mean, it's really kind of cool. Anyway, so there is a tangible assistance during times of stress. Informational support, of course, the family never has to cook because everybody else is bringing in all of this food. Invisible support or the perception that people in the community care because you're a member of a select church. This little town is really kind of interesting. It's not that big a town, but it has three major churches. It's got the Presbyterian Church, it has the Lutheran Church, and it has the Catholic Church. So these three churches, there's only three. These three churches come together and they will support each other in different things. They don't believe the same way. As a matter of fact, Lutherans think that everybody else is going to hell, and so do the Catholics and so do the Presbyterians, which is kind of fun. But they will, of course, they will come together and support each other for the community. Spiritual activity may promote health by fostering more positive emotions. Churchgoers tend to be optimistic, more optimistic than other individuals. Hopeful worldview, they have a hopeful worldview, feelings of acceptance, feelings of personal control, a sense that life is meaningful because, you go to church and you've got this whole Jesus Christ thing behind you. If a person sees an illness as a punishment from God, they will experience more physical and psychological distress than normal. And of course, I've run into these individuals and you have to talk to them and argue with them, trying to get them convinced that it wasn't God that made them sick. That's not where the coronavirus came from. It wasn't Jesus that came down and splashing coronavirus all over the Chinese. It wasn't Satan, or it wasn't Jesus that is punishing the homosexuals, and that's where HIV came from. That's where the AIDS virus came from. People actually thought that when AIDS first struck the United States. It's really dumb stuff. Prayer of itself seems to have no health benefits. Distant healing had no effects on health of the subject. When we lived up in Montana, there was a young lady who would have prayer circles, and you could call in and she would get her group together. And if it was really serious, like cancer, they would fast for like 3 days and pray the whole time, as bizarre as that was. Does any of this work? No. Well, it probably helps her, I guess, except she didn't eat anything for 3 days. She's skinny, the skinniest lady I've ever seen. She kept fasting because she was trying to cure people. She was a Buddhist Methodist something or other. It was a really odd connection. But she was able to get all these people to come together and pray. Physiological effects, enhanced stress management, exercise. Exercise is good for you, as Monique and I argue. She's having problems running now that she's getting a little bit larger. Physiological effects, enhanced blood flow to the brain, of course, lower blood pressure and resting heart rate, reduce cardiovascular reactivity to stress, fewer stress-related health problems. Psychological effects from running, from exercising, enhanced sense of well-being, decreased anxiety. Exercise offers time out, change of pace, boost to self-esteem. It usually improves your appearance. Of course, well, we won't go into that. Reduces depression by elevating low serotonin levels, similar to the effect of antidepressant drugs. So exercise is really good for you. You're going to hear this a lot from Jeremiah and me because we both exercise. We both lift weights. He lifts weights almost every day. I lift weights about once a week. But we're both exercisers, so you're going to hear this a lot. Exercise is good for you. It helps you physiologically and it helps you psychologically. It builds your self-esteem, and these are all good ideas. Progressive muscle relaxation is a form of training that reduces muscle tension through this series of tensing and relaxing exercises. Progressive muscle relaxation is the cornerstone of many modern relaxation procedures. It involves selecting a muscle group to target, tensing the muscles for 10 seconds, and then slowly releasing this. If you have a hard time going to sleep, one of the things that you can do is this muscle relaxing technique. You need to use tense your large muscles first, your thigh muscles, your biceps, your abdominal muscles. I was taught to work my way down my body. Work my way up my body. So you start off with your calves, tightening up your calves for 10 seconds and then relaxing them, tightening up your thighs, then you tighten up your gluteus maximus, then you tighten up your abdomen, then you tighten up your biceps. And you never make it to your biceps. By the time you get to your biceps, you've fallen asleep. Well, think about it. You're tensing up for 10 seconds, and you tense each leg separately. Relaxation response is a meditative state of slowed metabolism and lowered blood pressure. Deep breathing and visualization involves slowing down your breathing and making it deeper. Biofeedback is a system that provides audible or visible feedback on an involuntary physiological state. Meditative states actually do work. Theoretically, it makes you concentrate deeper if you meditate. I've never been an adherent of meditation, but there are some people that are. Biofeedback may be more effective with children than with adults. There are a few well-controlled clinical trials of patients with confirmed medical conditions. Even when effective, the reasons biofeedback works is not clear, raising the possibility that relaxation and enhanced sense of control or a placebo effect may be operating with biofeedback. So just knowing that your blood pressure is high, just knowing that piece of information can sometimes allow you to lower your blood pressure or change your situation. That's usually what happens. So if I'm, really pissed off at something and I find out that my blood pressure is high, then I will remove myself from that situation, put myself in a more relaxing situation. Does that mean that the biofeedback worked? No, it just told me that I had high blood pressure that I needed to control. Patients with lower back pain or migraine and tension headaches typically report less pain over time, even without any form of treatment. And the reality is that your body is constantly trying to block the pain. That's the way it works. Now, the problem is that if you have pain and it's chronic pain, that we can block it with drugs, we can block it in a lot of different ways, but pain has a way of rerouting itself so that your pain will come back. But your body is always trying to reduce the pain. Sometimes the pain is caused by muscle tension. And if we can reduce your muscle tension, a lot of times your pain will go away. Okay, so your body is always trying to fix itself. It always wants to be normal. It doesn't want to be in pain. It wants to feel good. And your body will do that if it possibly can. It will repair itself. That's its job, is to repair itself. Mindfulness-based stress reduction is a technique used to self-regulate negative reactions to stress. This training increases the activity in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. It regulates activity in the amygdala, where your emotion comes from. It regulates other parts of the limbic system that are activated by negative emotions and anxiety. 291, both of you guys have been in 291, right? The counseling class? Okay. This semester I'm doing 291 online, and it's tough. It's really tough. But I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I've got 31 students. They're all over the southwestern map, literally. I've got people in Quinta. I've got people in Cuba, New Mexico. It's over there between Albuquerque and Grant. So, yeah, I got them all over the place. I have 6 in Crown Point. I have 6 in Window Rock. I have 10 in Saley. Anyway, so I had one student that wanted me to train them in mindfulness-based stress reduction. She said that would be more important than learning how to counsel people. I said, well, we should be doing mindfulness in every class that we're teaching. Cognitive therapy teaches people new, more adaptive ways of thinking and acting. Cognitive therapy is based on the assumption that thoughts intervene between events and our emotional reactions, and that's where rumination comes from. That's the old cognitive therapy. Now, Sarah was trained as a cognitive psychologist, but her training was more toward the research aspect of the cognitive approach, as weird as that is. So here I am, I'm teaching I was teaching up at Fort Belknap for 10 years, and I started teaching at Ashford University. And who's the first person I run into? Another cognitive psychologist. Damn it, I can't stay away from those guys. Anyway, so I'm talking about cognitive therapy, and he was talking about research. That's his style of. Is that right? Yeah, it's chapter 6. He was talking about something totally different. Made me sound like an idiot. Anyway, I didn't survive. Of course I survived. Chapter 6, staying healthy, primary prevention and positive psychology. That's the way I like to teach, is in a positive manner. I try to teach positive psychology, staying resilient and doing whatever you can. Health-enhancing behavior or habit, exercising regularly, and of course, we talk about this all the time. Using sunscreen, you guys don't really have to worry about, well, you do. You have to worry about sunscreen. I really do, because I'm really pale, and almost blue pale. My skin has no tone to it whatsoever. So I really need to use sunscreen, but I don't, like an idiot. Eat healthy, of course. These are our Granny Smith apples. I had 2 Granny Smith apples for lunch, and they were good. I had said they were so good. Practicing safe sex. There's a reason why this is in your textbook. It's because most of the kids that take health psychology are 18 to 19 and 20-year-olds. Okay, so this is really important to those individuals. They need to practice safe sex. Wearing seatbelts, of course, and that's the smartest thing that you can do. You guys both wear your seatbelts, right? Okay. Montana, they don't wear seatbelts, and the reason that natives don't wear seatbelts is because they're afraid their cars is going to burst into flame and they're not going to be able to get out of their seatbelt. You think I'm kidding? I've been told this over and over and over again. I don't wear my seatbelt because my car might burst into fire. why do cars in Montana burst into flames and they don't any place else? It's kind of like the zombie apocalypse. They think it's really going to happen in Clinton, Iowa. It's the oddest thing. There's so many people. They're massing ammunition and weaponry so that they can fight off the zombie apocalypse. Where do they come up with this stuff? Smoking, of course, is stupid. Excessive eating is equally not real bright. Substance abuse, in this case she's snorting cocaine. Kind of stupid, she's got 4 lines here. The reality is that when you snort cocaine, it's a vasoconstrictor. So if you snort one line up one nostril and a second line up the second nostril, if you try to snort the third line, it ain't gonna go anywhere because all of your blood vessels in your nose are constricted at this point. Okay, so she has 4 lines here. I'm just telling you why that's so silly. And you can see she's pretty strung out. Snorting cocaine's dumb anyway. Dangerous driving, and of course this is somebody from England because the steering wheel's on the right. And risky sexual behavior, of course, not the smartest thing in the world to do, but because we're talking to 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who are still kids, they're still teenagers, they don't understand how sex works and what it's supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. The Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Project is a project conducted by the CDC to determine what behaviors lead to early death. This is really important to me. For some reason, I have been focused on dying for a really long time. When I was like 11 and 12 years old, I was sure anytime my parents got in the car together that they were going to have an accident and I was going to be left an orphan. The reason is because right down the road from my house was an orphanage, and my mother, and because I was the worst kid in the family, she always threatened to put me in the orphanage. So every time we drove past the orphanage, I'm really watching because I wanted to see what's going on in the orphanage because I was just sure my mother was going to drop me there one of these days. I don't know that my dad will let her do that, but she sure swore that she was going to do it. And it really snapped me into being a good boy, as much as I possibly could be. So I really thought about people dying. So I used to read the obituaries to find out how long I was going to live. When I was born, 56, 57 years old was the life expectancy of someone born in 1949. So why people died was really important to me. I wanted to see how they died and why they died. And of course, reading the obituaries in the old days, they used to actually tell you that they died of cancer or they died in an automobile accident or whatever. They don't do that anymore. Now the obituaries just tell you that they died. But they never tell you that they died of pancreatic cancer or whatever. If the following are started when young, premature death is predicted: smoking and other forms of tobacco use, that includes dipping snuff, stupid thing to do. Eating high-fat and low-fiber foods. We know this now. When I was young, of course, a good healthy breakfast was eggs, bacon, and toast and orange juice. That was a good healthy breakfast. Now we don't eat the bacon with our eggs. Eggs are, for a long time, for like 20 years, we were trying to stay away from eggs because of the cholesterol. But now, of course, now we know it's not the eggs, it's the bacon. Not engaging in enough physical activity, that's kind of stupid. Abusing alcohol or other drugs, including marijuana. Marijuana is not really good for you, okay? We have a lot of, and every time I read a study about marijuana, they're telling us more bad stuff about marijuana. But now Bernie Sanders has said, he just said yesterday, that he was thinking that we should legalize marijuana all over the United States, which is going to make us the dumbest nation on earth. Well, maybe not the dumbest. There are other nations where it's legalized. Maybe they're the dumbest. Not using proven medical methods for preventing or diagnosing disease early, flu shots, pap smears, colonoscopies, mammograms. Flu shots, of course, you're supposed to have every year. It's not so bad for you guys because you're young and you don't have to worry about it. But babies, young kids and old farts, they really need to get their flu shot. Pap smears, of course, have to do with looking for cancers of the female reproductive area, of the cervix, of the uterus. That's what that's looking for. In the military, of course, you get a pap smear every year because they want to make sure that you're not dying of cancer, I guess. Colonoscopies after the age of 50, then they suggest that colon cancer is fairly serious. They suggest you get a colonoscopy. My wife had one, but I've never had one. But every year my wife has a mammogram done, and of course that's something that men don't have to worry about, but women do. So 2 of these are for women, and the other 2 are for everybody. But pap smears for uterine cancer, or cervical cancer, or the vaginal cancer, which is relatively rare. Mammograms for breast cancer. Engaging in violent behavior that may cause unintentional injuries, of course, that's mostly men. They're the dummies that do all kinds of stupid things. Skateboarding down stairs. I don't understand what that's all about. 9.5 years into the famous Almeida health study, the mortality of men who regularly practiced all 7 health habits was 28% of the mortality of those who had practiced 3 or fewer healthy behaviors. In other words, if they did all of those, they were the ones who died. You need to sleep 7 to 8 hours daily. You need to never smoke, of course. Being at or near a healthy body weight. A healthy body weight is kind of controversial because you really can't just make a chart for everybody. It doesn't fit. We have tall, slender people. We have short, squat people. We have very large, relatively large people. So being the healthy body weight is really controversial. When I was in the military in the 70s and 80s, we were trying to decide how small people were supposed to be, how skinny they were supposed to be. And we were actually kicking people out of the service for being too overweight. And of course, my wife is a short, squat person, so when she was in the service, she had to really fight to keep her weight down. What they want people in the military to be is tall and skinny, is tall and slender, really tall and really slender. That's the ideal military person. Not that that person's a better fighter, but the fact that somebody had told them that the ideal body weight was a lot smaller, or less than what most people were. Moderate use of alcohol, you can drink some, but not a lot. Regular physical exercise, extremely important. Eating breakfast and avoiding between meals snacking. So eating breakfast is important. You guys eat breakfast? I got one breakfast, no breakfast. I drink a glass of V8 juice. Remember the commercial where the guy said, I could have had a V8 and then he slaps himself in the head? I never slap myself in the head. What are we talking? Healthy behaviors and death rates. Over 75, what is this? Percentage who died since study began. The curves represent mortality of each group in relation to the number of health behaviors. So the more healthy things that you do, the older that you will live. Yeah, something like that. Okay. This non-stage theory, the health belief model, the HBM. This non-stage theory emphasizes the interacting factors that influence our decision-making about health behaviors. If we believe that an available course of action will reduce our susceptibility to or the severity of the condition, then we will engage in that health behavior based on perceived susceptibility, perceived severity of the health threat, perceived benefits of the barriers to treatment, and cues to action. And a good example of this would be diabetes. If you're Native American, then you are more susceptible to diabetes than somebody who isn't Native American, evidently. How about alcohol? Are you guys more susceptible to alcoholism than other groups? I hear people complain about it a lot on the reservation. A study done in Montana found that there were more white alcoholics than there were native alcoholics per capita. So in Montana, it's dangerous to be white because you're more likely to be a drunk. As weird as that is. But you guys think about drinking sometimes. That this is a really serious problem on the reservation, or is it? It is. Okay. Well, like I keep telling you, you're amateurs when it comes to drinking. Europeans are professionals. They've been doing it a long time. They're better at it. They can drink a lot more. And you guys tend to binge drink. According to the health belief model, a person will take action if they regard themselves as susceptible, as you potentially do with diabetes. I was talking to Jeremiah about this. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this. He has diabetes in his family, and he's scared of it, so he stays away from, and high blood pressure. He stays away from salt and sugar. What a life if you can't eat salt and drink sugar. No, eat sugar and drink salt. They believe the condition has serious personal consequences, and in his case, of course, you could have that problem. They believe that a course of action will either reduce their susceptibility to the severity of the condition. They believe that the benefits of the action outweigh the costs. Environmental influences are encouraging change, like your family, your boss telling you you have to change, or the health department telling you to stop drinking. The theory of planned behavior predicts that a person's decision to engage in a particular health behavior is based on behavioral intention determined by three factors: personal attitude toward the behavior, motivation to comply with the views of other people in regard to the behavior, perceived expectation of success in performing that behavior. The trans-theoretical or stages of change model assesses a person's readiness to act on a new, healthier behavior. The model also identifies strategies and processes to guide the individual through the stages of change to successful action and maintenance. Critics point out that the stages are not mutually exclusive, and people do not always move sequentially through discrete stages as they strive to change health behaviors. And of course, we see that, I saw this with my wife. She's overweight, or she has been overweight. She's okay now. I don't know. She's okay now. But she thinks she's fat, of course. So watching her move through these stages is really kind of interesting. Stage one, pre-contemplation. The individual is not thinking about changing their behavior. They may be in denial that the behavior needs to be changed. Drinking, I'm not an alcoholic. I can quit anytime I want. I'm okay. Contemplation, they admit that they have a problem. They are seriously considering changing the behavior in the near future. Anytime you're counseling somebody and they claim that they don't have a problem that you think that they have, you're not going to be able to change them. Because unless they think that they have a problem, they're not going to change. So they're in the pre-contemplation stage. And until you can get them in the contemplation stage, until some crisis has occurred, they've left their kid at the school all night, I don't know what, because they were drinking. Sometimes they'll leave their kids in the car while they go to the bar. As stupid as that sounds, these kinds of things happen from time to time. And then, of course, the police come and confiscate the children, and they go in and yell at the guy, and he's drunk, so he doesn't care at this point, but then all of a sudden, when he wakes up in jail the next day for child neglect, then maybe he has convinced himself that something needs to happen. Maybe he's in the contemplation stage. Then maybe he will admit that he has a problem. I was addicted to the hokey pokey, but I turned myself around. That's funny.
What was that?
You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around.
Um,
That's what it's all about. Put your left arm in, you put your left arm on. Put your left arm in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. Okay. Preparation, this stage includes both thoughts and actions. The actions include specific plans toward the behavioral change. And what did we just learn? Of course, you were out of the room when we found this out, but if you laugh, humor builds your natural killer cells. So it's good for you, it lowers your blood pressure. Okay. So you need to laugh as frequently as you possibly can.
I had an instructor for one of my literature classes. He was in theater, and he talked about how he was doing a play and it was very serious, and here the audience just started laughing and he wasn't sure why, but I guess it was because it was so serious and like they were very into the emotion and everything. They just went.
It's either that or cry. Cry or laugh, one of the two. Good for them. So laughing is good for you. Wait a minute, I can show you where it is. Wait a minute, I'm going the wrong direction. Laughing is good for you. Where did we see it? Oh, wait a minute. Laughing. Where did we see humor? Where did we see humor? Maybe it was on the other slide. It was on the other side. Okay, sorry. Stage 3 is preparation. This stage includes both thoughts and actions. The actions include specific plans toward the behavioral change. Action is stage 4. People are actually changing their behavior and are trying to sustain their efforts. If you took the 291 class, this is exactly what we were talking about in the 291 class. How do we change somebody who has a mental illness or a mental problem? These were exactly the same stages that we were talking about. Stage 5, maintenance. People maintain their success. As in the case of addictive behavior, this stage can last indefinitely. An arbitrary cutoff is at 6 months, of course. That's if it's doesn't have to do with drugs or alcohol. You can never go back. You can never return to your behavior from before. If you ever start, you won't be able to stop. And of course, we see this over and over and over again, especially with people who have addictive behavior patterns. Primary prevention refers to health-enhancing efforts to prevent disease or injury from occurring, wearing seatbelts, practicing good nutrition, exercising, avoiding smoking, obtaining regular health screening, maintaining healthy sleep patterns. This is really important. As you get older, your sleep patterns will change. You'll need less and less sleep. At this point, I'm at 6 hours. If I get more than 6 hours, my hips start to hurt. So I can't just lay in bed for 7 or 8 hours. It doesn't work. I can't do it. When I was younger and I was different, by golly, I could lay in bed for 7 or 8 hours, but I've never been much of a sleeper. My wife can stay in bed forever, like for 12 hours. It just amazes me. I can't do it. My hips start hurting. I can't do it at all. Secondary prevention involves actions taken to identify and treat an illness or disability early in its occurrence, monitoring your symptoms, taking medication, of course, dietary changes, following treatment regimens that you are trying to get over the disease. Tertiary prevention involves actions taken to contain damage once a disease or disability has progressed beyond its early stages. Radiation therapy, chemotherapy, of course this has to do with cancer. Less cost-effective and less beneficial than primary or secondary preventions. The most common form of health care, of course, is the tertiary prevention. In other words, once you have developed the disease, now we try to cure it. This is one of the problems with healthcare in the United States. That's one of the reasons why healthcare is so expensive, because we don't catch anybody until they've already got the disease. What we need to do is prevent the disease from happening. That's the way it works. It's cheaper that way, and that's what other countries are doing. This is one of the reasons why healthcare costs are cheaper in Canada, in Europe. They have universal healthcare, and it's a lot cheaper over there than it is in the United States. And it's actually better. I had let's see, what can I call her? She was my ex-wife, I guess. Let's call her my ex-wife. I had an ex-wife who I couldn't did I say knock up? I didn't mean that. I couldn't get her pregnant. She couldn't get pregnant. And so she left me and she married somebody else. And then she married somebody else. Okay. Anyway, so then she was stationed over at Schusterberg in Holland. And they have universal health care. So while she was in the States, nobody would work her up. It was too expensive, nobody was going to do anything about her reproductive health. So while she was in Holland, they have universal health care, which includes all the American service people that are stationed there. So she went in to see a doctor about the fact that she couldn't get pregnant. Turned out that she had one of her fallopian tubes was closed off. And the reason it was closed off is because it had adhesed to her colon, so it had pinched it off, so that the egg couldn't get, and I don't know if the sperm couldn't get down there, because it would have impregnated her, and it wouldn't have been able to go anywhere. So it was blocked off completely, because otherwise she would have gotten pregnant. She would have had an ectopic pregnancy. So what they did, they went in and they straightened it out. They pulled it off the colon and they straightened it out. And so first, this is not funny. Stop laughing, it's not funny. So the first week, or this first month that she had her fallopian tubes fixed, she got pregnant. And she had an ectopic pregnancy, and it blew out one of her 2 fallopian tubes. So now she's only got 1 left. Okay. So then she was afraid to have sex. I wasn't married to her at this time, okay? She was already 2 husbands down the line. All right. Anyway, why am I talking about this? Healthcare costs, okay. Yeah, it was a lot cheaper. So they did it. I mean, the Dutch actually fixed her reproduction. And now she has 2 children. But she had to do artificial insemination because, anyway. She still has her 1 fallopian tube, but she's in her 60s, so it really doesn't matter how many fallopian tubes she has left. She's too old to have babies anyway. I think. She was born in 54. What does that make her? It makes her 46, 60, 66. She's 66. She's way too old to have babies. Chemotherapy a lot less cost-effective and less beneficial than primary and secondary prevention. Most common form of health care is unfortunately the treatment. The diseases that killed our ancestors have now been eradicated. Polio used to kill people. Smallpox, big-time killer. Tetanus, we don't. Now we have shots for tetanus, diphtheria, rheumatic fever. These were what used to kill our ancestors. They killed off all your ancestors when the Europeans first came over here, unfortunately. And by the 90, maybe as many as 99% of all natives died when the Europeans first got here because of the diseases. And that's what I forgot. I forgot my power cable. And now no, that's all right. We'll stop right here anyway. Since I forgot my power cable. Anyway, let's turn this off. Anyway, yeah, so all those diseases used to kill people. And unfortunately,